Hello and a very warm welcome to you. I'm Aenslee Tanner.
Hi, I'm Alma Orts.
And like many of you, we've had numerous discussions over the past weeks about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the uncertainty and ambiguity and chaos it's caused. The changes we're experiencing in the way that we work, the fears that it's triggering in us. And we've also been marveling at some of the amazing displays of humanity and leadership that we've been seeing through the crisis, discussing what we've been learning from the experience and how we can grow through this, and what we hope the world will be like post-COVID-19. And so we discussed this for a while, and we thought, in case it's a useful support for your own processing of this crisis, we decided to synthesize our thoughts into this video that we're recording for you here. And our intention is to share some of our observations and experiences of the impact of the current pandemic, as well as to bring the lens of adult or vertical development into the discussion. And so we're going to do this by structuring our discussion into 4 chapters. The first one, we're going to warm up by exploring our responses to the seemingly simple question, how are you? In chapter 2, we'll share some of our key observations of what it's been like to be in lockdown here in New Zealand for us for the past 4 weeks or so. And in chapter 3, we're going to offer ourselves as case studies for development by reflecting on our own growth edge experiences. And finally, we'll wrap up with chapter 4, offering some tips and tools for you to support your own development through the crisis. So Alma, to kick us off in chapter 1, how are you?
I'm overall okay, but at the beginning I was feeling very positive about the situation and how COVID was not going, or the lockdown was not going to affect me as much because I'm used to work by myself at home. But the last couple of weeks, the feeling of exhaustion, it's been very present. I haven't had time or the opportunity to do the things that I usually do to relax and disconnect. And that has made me feel, as we've talked about before, like in over my head. I just, as everybody else, kind of not knowing what to do, what's next, the uncertainty. And what about you?
Yes.
How are you?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to share is just how I've noticed the answer to this question suddenly has become so much maybe complex to answer, and the answers have become so much richer in the past weeks. How are you? This seemingly simple question in the past was almost rhetorical. We were so busy going about our lives that it was just something we'd say in passing. Hey, how are you? And move on without really waiting for the answer. But now when we stop and think, especially being in lockdown, it really causes this sense of like pause to reflect on all of the tumult of emotions and the amount of change, the unprecedented amount of change that we're experiencing. It really, it makes this question much harder to answer nowadays. But checking in with myself, it's definitely been a roller coaster. It's been up and down. Interestingly, when we first went into lockdown, I didn't feel like that much changed. For me personally, I had worked from home before. I was able to continue to work from home. And I recognize my privilege in that, being in a situation where that was the case, because for so many people, they're not able to work from home, or their essential services are still out. It was a really strange feeling at first, recognizing the world's changing, but for me, it doesn't seem to be that much. That was weird. And so I thought it was fine, actually, for a couple of weeks. And then I really started to feel the weight of the change and the amount of emotional processing. And I've even heard people describe it as kind of collective trauma that we're all going through, collective grief that we're all experiencing from the loss of the world we thought we knew. And that really hit me to the point where there was this one day, I remember distinctly, my last Zoom meeting was at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And I was like, that's it. I got a hot drink, curled up in bed, closed the bedroom door. I was like, I'm done. Like, I cannot take any more on from the world today. So I've had those moments too. So it's been, up and down for me. And really, really interesting to reflect on how much has stayed the same for me and how much has significantly changed.
Yeah, I think that it's very important to acknowledge that, you know, both of us, we are used to kind of work from home and have our own environment, and even though we thought nothing was really going to change that much, it has, and it does, because it has changed a lot for the rest of the people around us. So they are not having their normal day. That's why the question of, hey, how are you doing? It suddenly has taken a complete different perspective, because you really don't know how people are doing. It was, as you mentioned before, like a polite kind of transaction, like a normal human day-to-day thing. But now you actually wait for the answer because you want to know, because your day and your daily life has changed so much. So it's the day of everybody else. So you have to wait for the answer. And I think we are all facing our own challenges. Some people, like essential workers, and even for them that they still have to go to work, the amount of work that they have to do is a lot.
Yes.
And then going back home, or what we're talking about, just looking at the road and there is no one there, the feeling of wow, what's going on? It's scary. It's scary because generally changes are scary. That doesn't mean that they are bad. It's just
the unknown.
Exactly, the unknown.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you make such a good point, like that we're all going through this, we're all experiencing it differently. And I think it's Brene Brown I've heard speak about this idea of like, don't get into this, you know, comparative suffering kind of dilemma. Like just acknowledge whatever is going on for you is real, and that's your journey to process. And it's not about, is it worse or better than somebody else. So yeah, that I think that's a really important message for us to take out of this, is that yes, some of us are very lucky and there's a lot to be grateful for. And there's still a lot to process
Exactly.
as we go through it. So yeah, absolutely. How about let's go into chapter 2 now and look at some of our observations from our lockdown experiences. So Alma, from what you've experienced over the past 4 weeks, like what are some of the things you're noticing?
I've actually have realized a lot about my well-being. I did not pay that much attention about how I eat or the exercise I do or things like that. And nowadays they actually make a huge impact in the way that how I am. The days that I haven't been, or, you know, going for my bubble walk or taking time for myself, or haven't been just eating crap and focusing on my work in my computer, I couldn't sleep. And I felt like crap the day after. Generally, I'm so distracted, or pre-COVID, I was so distracted that I didn't realize how much those things have an impact in my well-being, in my general well-being. It's not just about, you know, going to the gym and be fit, and it's actually being able to disconnect from what you are doing and pay attention of your needs. It's not just working and looking good and, you know, finishing your day. It's actually paying attention to the things that you need.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to build on what you're saying there, because I had a similar noticing for myself. I tend to plan every minute of my day. I love the feeling of being productive and efficient. And so if there's a spare block in my calendar, something's going in there, and it's just boom, boom, boom. I'm constantly filling my time to feel like I'm accomplishing a lot and, you know, fitting a lot in. And now that I don't have spin class to go, you know, it's not an option to go to my gym and do my spin classes and go out to restaurants, go traveling. I'm actually finding that there's this space in there that I hadn't acknowledged before, to feel actually, rather than just focusing on what's planned, what did I plan to do? What do I feel like in this moment? That is something I have not, I'm recognizing I have not created a lot of space for myself in the past. And so I'm enjoying learning that about myself and creating more space for that spontaneity, that being present in the here and now and going with the flow of actually, what is my body calling for? Is it saying, you know what, I don't care that it's 2 o'clock and I have a full day of work planned. I am done. And it's
Yeah.
time to just take care of me. Let's go. So that's something, yeah, I can totally notice for myself. I'm learning from this experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's kind of great the fact that it's, for me, it's giving me the chance to think about what I need at the moment. Because I sometimes, as you said, you have a spinning class, and before that you have to work and you have to, I also like the feeling of being productive, but sometimes I've put that productivity over my own needs because I had to accomplish these things. And if I did all the things that were in my diary, I had been productive, I could be happy, and I could be proud of myself. And now I've realized that sometimes I just need a break. And as I'm in the same kind of environment, it's like I cannot keep going. And my productivity, it's just linked to how I am feeling at the moment. And sometimes, as you said, in the middle of the day, I just need a break.
Yeah.
And that break means I'm going to do my Duolingo class, or I'm going to doodle for a while because I am exhausted.
Yes.
I don't have, also the fact that I don't have, these extra activities that I can do, it's it's helping me to understand when I need. It's helping me to listen to my body and needs. I'm not afraid anymore of not being productive or being wasting my time, because I don't have to be productive those 8 hours that I'm paid for working. I have the whole day for myself, and I can schedule the things. And I've realized that I'm actually being more productive, and I'm having more time for myself. Sometimes I have a break at 2 p.m., the Spanish siesta. And then I'm working sometimes until 7, or I just take my computer and keep thinking or keep, researching papers, or because I feel like doing it. Whereas before it was like 6 p.m., done. I'm not doing anything else with my brain. I'm going to have a glass of wine. It's glass of wine time. Now it's like, I'm listening more to my needs, which is great because it's the first time that I'm doing it.
Yeah. And isn't it funny that it takes an experience like this, but it's a wake-up call, right? And a growth opportunity. And I want to just call out for the folks listening that what I heard there from both of our experiences is this embracing more broadly of the two sides of a polarity, rather than overprivileging the productivity and the efficiency and the doing, creating space to nourish ourselves and create a sustainable system for ourselves by allowing space for presence, for being in the here and now, for responding to what's in the moment rather than what had been planned to be done. Space to be rather than just do. So yeah, that's definitely a key observation for us here. What else, Alma? What else?
There is something that I've realized, and I have never been able to actually put words on it, and it's the difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Because in my normal days, in a normal day, how many times do you say hello, goodbye, how are you, from 8 a.m. to midday? You have a lot of interactions, but they are not as meaningful, and you don't really pay that much attention. And even though you have been interacting, you don't feel like you have, shared that time. You feel lonely, even though you are surrounded by people. Now we are forced to be alone, and I feel less lonely than I've ever been. Sometimes I don't talk to anybody or talk to the same person in 6 hours, but that connection, it's very intense. It's like, hey, how is your day going? Or even seeing my flatmates working around the house, and we are with our cup of coffee, and we stop in the corridor to actually talk, and
Yes.
And also I've realized that I've always been a very social person, and all my social activities have been suddenly cut. But I still have time to talk to my friends, and we still have fun ways to catch up. So even though we are forced to be in a lockdown, and because it's the way to go, it's the way that we have to do things in order to overcome this situation, I'm finding times for not, I don't feel lonely. because I'm finding times to care and be with my friends and talk to my family and,
Yes.
be more present.
Yes.
Rather than just interacting and just keep going with the day as if people were going by without actually me paying any attention to them. I do pay attention now.
Yes. Yes. That resonates a lot. And I've heard that from a number of other people too. Like, instead of being on this treadmill of off to the next thing, off to the next thing, like making eye contact with people, on the morning bubble walk, or, having a conversation with the post delivery person, or, keeping a safe distance, but having a conversation with the neighbors, like actually slowing down and having that human to human connection. Really interesting how this context seems to have brought out some of that. Absolutely.
Even when you are walking around in your, bubble walk, as when you see a person coming and you have to keep the social distancing, you actually have eye contact with the person and both of you kind of, give a space to each other.
Yeah.
Whereas a month ago, how many people did you cross with? So many. And didn't you make eye contact with them? No, because you were used to. It was just, part of the landscape. Whereas now it's like, human.
Yes,
Wow.
exactly.
Let's protect each other. And you kind of smile to each other because you are protecting each other, keeping the social distance.
Yes.
So you are establishing not just the eye contact, you show that you care, you are being kind.
Yes, yes. And there's this sense, I think, behind it of we're in this together. Like, we're recognizing each other as having this common experience, that we are connected, we're together, we are influencing and affecting each other, which is always the case, but something that the pandemic has brought really to the fore. Remembering that human connection. I'd say, building on that, one of the things that I've noticed is, because many people are working from home now, we're having these online video calls. We're getting glimpses into people's personal lives, right? Whether it's the photos on the wall or, the room, the environment somebody's working from. I think there's certainly been a change in dress code that we're seeing. And there's like this breakdown of barriers between the personal and the professional self. I think that's been one of the challenges from recent times for people is, how do I feel authentic and bring my whole self to work? That kind of language has been talked about, because people feel like they have to put on this armor or put on this mask when they go into the office, and they have to have this separation between personal and professional. And now that's just kind of melting away. There was this really, really touching moment my partner shared with me, where he was on a call with a colleague, and it was the end of the day, and the door behind his colleague, he could see open on the video, and this little head peeked through. And, it was a curious little daughter who was wondering, what's my dad doing? What's he doing on this video call? And he called her over, and finished the call with him sitting on his knee. And it's like, wow, like such a blending of that personal and professional side, really just being human, right? Yes, we can talk about work things, and guess what? I have a life and a family, and all of the challenges that come with that. And so, yeah, there's something about this, just noticing this collective humanity and recognizing each other as people, rather than human resources or others, that we're in this together. Yeah.
And I think it has pulled down a little bit our defenses too, because imagine, at least in my normal day, I would get ready to work, like makeup, my jacket and the heels or the boots or whatever. Whereas now I'm with my socks and I'm with, I'm dressed as I'm comfy. Because being comfy is more important for me right now than look professional. And actually, I haven't changed. I'm as professional as I was a month ago. I'm just not spending as much time in building all these images of myself.
Yes.
And I feel things are way more relaxed in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to close with just a few more quick observations that I'm probably gonna miss actually. I think when the lockdown is over, I'm definitely appreciating, because I live right in the city, appreciating the less noise. It's so quiet. That's lovely. Like absolutely lovely. Less traffic congestion, amazing. People can get across town so quickly at the moment, and certainly the cleaner air, absolutely amazing. And then just one other thought about the, you know, having less options to
Yeah.
do right now. I'm recognizing for myself that it's opening up mental capacity that I didn't realize was being chewed up before. So, you know, on a Saturday, for example, start of the weekend, I would typically have been making choices like, which regional park am I going to go run in? What gear am I going to bring with me? Where am I going to go out to eat later? Just so many decisions that I'm not making now, because it's basically, I'm in my bubble and that's it.
Yeah.
This is the option. And I'm really noticing that there's this extra mental capacity that's not being chewed up by all of these little decisions. And I mean, it's such a luxury, right, to have these things. I never would have considered them burdens, but I'm just recognizing for myself that actually, by wondering, where am I going to holiday next? What am I going to do on the weekend? By having all these options, actually, it's taxing to some extent. So that's been an interesting observation for me as
Yeah.
well. So.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So how about we move into chapter 3? Let's talk about some of our growth edges that we're noticing in through this experience, and how we're feeling called to grow, and the growth that we are noticing in ourselves. Would you like to kick it off, Alma?
Yeah, sure. Um, Something that I have realized, and it's linked to what we were talking about, getting ready to work, or I've realized that perfection is not that important anymore and it's overrated. If you are giving a presentation, as we are using new tools, or not new tools, but we are not as used to use them as, having human to human interactions, and everybody's now using Google Meet and Zoom, this kind of tools, and we are kind of, or not as used to it is, yeah, as I said. So perfection doesn't exist. Doesn't really matter if you make mistakes or suddenly your connection is bad, or you are struggling to actually share a video or take annotations, or as we are all in the same boat, we are more forgiving. We are not, oh no, this person is not professional at all. And we are being less judgy, but not just towards other people, towards ourselves, because we realize that we are learning, we are adapting, and we are all in the same boat. And I think that's a great thing to notice, because sometimes we don't realize that, there is a lot of importance, or there is a big message behind what a person is saying, but we just prejudge them by how the slides are prepared, or how the person is dressed, or how the person looks like. And all those distractions suddenly have disappeared, and you just focus on the content. And if a person makes a mistake, you kind of wait and smile, because you have been there not long ago, probably a couple of hours ago.
Yeah.
So we are building this kindness and creating new priorities that I'm quite enjoying.
Mm-hmm. And I so relate to this one. So this absolutely a growth edge for me, that this transition to working from home more often, doing more events online, especially not facilitating in person, but facilitating online. Oh my goodness, has given me so many opportunities, because you can't control the technology. If the internet drops out, if the camera stops working, that's what happens. And so it's been a real opportunity for me to, in those moments, role model. It's okay. It's okay. Certain things are out of our control, and let's go with the flow. Let's make the best of it. I've had plenty of those opportunities on webinars recently. So it's been really great noticing for myself the stretch in that, and having the opportunity to practice, and hopefully, role model for others that, why am I going to get all judgy? That's not serving me or anybody else. It is what it is. I prepare as best as I can, try to create a great experience. And even if, there's a roadblock in the way, I work with it in the moment, right? So that transition to being more, again, present, spontaneous, that's a growth edge I'm working on, definitely.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
I really like that thought. And I really like the fact that you kept using opportunity.
Mm.
Whereas I don't know as much about you, but for me that a month ago would have been, oh, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And now it's actually an opportunity to learn or to deal with that adversity. It's like,
Yes.
okay, the video is not working. So I need to make this work because I'm giving a presentation. So instead of just stopping everything and being, oh, what I did, it's like, okay, so there is no video, so let's get creative. I'm
Yeah.
going to be talking, and you please, if you get lost, just let me know,
Yes.
and we'll see how it goes. And people get the
Exactly.
message anyway.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think there's something so human about it too, right? Recognizing that fallibility, not feeling like I need to put on this perfection armor, right? And show up as some other version of myself other than the, fallible human that I am. So that's been really interesting. And I noticed myself when I was sharing that experience with you that, yes, I was using the word opportunity and smiling at the same time because it feels uncomfortable. So it's like,
yeah,
yes, I recognize there's an opportunity for me to grow here. And it doesn't quite feel the way that I wish it would. So yeah, just recognizing that that's part of the growth process, right? It's feeling a bit of discomfort. It's not quite the norm for us. It's not quite the space where we feel comfortable yet. So yeah.
but it's nice the fact that we are forced to be kind towards ourselves,
Yeah.
because I think it's in our current society we are under so much pressure and there is so many expectations over us, and we have to do so many things that we actually don't. We have realized nowadays, or with this new situation, that those things are not as important.
Yeah.
There are other priorities, and being perfect mm, doesn't matter. You are not less professional because your video doesn't work, or you are not less professional because you suddenly forget what you were going to say. That's human, and
Yeah.
it's fine. It
Yes.
doesn't diminish the quality of your content or of
Mhm.
whatever you have to say.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to share another growth edge of mine, or a place where I think I've seen growth in myself. I can imagine an earlier version of myself would have told a story about being in lockdown that would have sounded something like, I know what being in lockdown is like. I've been through it. Really kind of, stuck in my own perspective of
Mm-hmm.
that experience. And I'm noticing for where I'm at now, the ability to take in and hold more perspectives, to recognize that I'm having an experience of lockdown and there are many others that other people are having. And it's not about right or wrong or better or worse. It's real for each individual. Recognizing that, some people are feeling incredibly bored being locked up, right? For other people, they've lost the boundary between work and private life and are feeling absolutely overwhelmed, scrambling at all hours, trying to fit everything in, right? That's happening at the same time for different people. There are some people for whom being at home is not safe. They are now locked in tight quarters with a domestic abuse situation going on. Like, that's the reality for some people. There are some who have lost their jobs and aren't able to work from home, right? And they're wondering how on earth, they're stressing out about how am I going to make ends meet, right? Others, they're enjoying having more family time, that everybody's actually together for more hours of the day. And I'm hearing from others that they're going crazy trying to handle full-time work with parenting, with homeschooling, with all the things, right? It's just too much. And all those experiences are happening, and they're all valid and they're all real. And so for myself, that's been I'm noticing growth to be able to hold all those experiences and not judge any of them, but just see, wow, I'm having an experience and others are having very different ones.
And
And yeah.
yeah. No, sorry, continue.
Well, I was just going to say, kind of related to that, I think the ability to hold more perspectives than I could before. I'm also able to take a different perspective on conflict. So conflict has been something it is a real growth area for me, because I tend to be an avoider. of conflict. I like harmony. Very easy for me to just say, if this makes you happy, we'll do it that way. So for me to actively challenge and get involved in creating a different outcome rather than just kind of letting things go another person's way is a stretch for me. And I'm noticing in some of the conversations I've been able to have in recent weeks that actually I'm starting to be able to hold more of a perspective that conflict, having a debate, having a discussion about different perspectives can be a creative opportunity. It's an opportunity for your valid perspective and my valid perspective to combine in some way, to nudge each other towards something maybe even better, to cause us to get curious about, okay, if there's this perspective and there's this perspective, what other perspectives might there be? What could we create out of this by engaging and sharing our different perspectives in a constructive way? So I'm noticing that kind of as a side effect, I think, to being able to take different perspectives that's flowing on to how I am able to navigate conflict as well. Yeah.
I actually agree. I've had like exactly the same, but the other way around. It's not that I like confrontation, but I'm extremely direct to the point that I can be too direct for people because I say things the way I think them. Sometimes there is no filter with my brain and my mouth, which is a problem. And due to this situation, and we are four flatmates living here, all working from home, all stressed out. I've realized that, you know, we all have our own opinion, we all have our own battle, but we are actually all sharing the same burden. So sometimes, you know, my flatmates making a coffee in the morning when I'm sleeping, that would make me angry because they have waken me up, and I would be, oh, it's always the same, it's whatever and whatever. And I would probably go out and say, could you keep it quiet or something like that, or try to be nice about it, but say it. Whereas now it's like, am I getting angry because they are making a coffee, or just because, and they woke me up, or it's just because I am stressed? And I am just projecting my stress towards the situation and using it as an excuse to explode, which I actually have done in the past and I hadn't realized before. And the thing is that now, as we are all in the same boat, we are all sharing the same burden, we are being nicer towards each other. We have like the same enemy, which is, you know, being able to deal with the lockdown. And for example, I'm from Spain, and my family and the situation in Spain is a delicate situation. Another of my flatmates, she's from England, and she's also having to deal with the situation over there and here. And sometimes we have down moments, or we just go to the lounge and don't say anything. And then it's like, oh, hey, sorry, I didn't say anything. I was just, you know, in my thoughts. And I would have never done that because I would be like, yeah, I have my reasons to just be on my own and I don't want to be disturbed. And I was like, I'm living with more people and I might have made them uncomfortable by ignoring them. And it's not their fault and it's not my fault either, it's the situation. So it's kind of, it has put things in perspective for me. And I am now able to see things from another point of view. I'm developing a skill for being more considerate because, you know, they also are. And it's, we're all trying to make this work and we're all trying to make an effort, even though the situation sometimes is overwhelming. And what you were saying before, you know, the opportunity to grow through different perspectives and different points of view, and how we don't let this anger feed each other's anger. We kind of go a step backwards and try to take perspective and see, okay, what's the problem here? Why am I getting angry for? Or it's I'm actually angry at the person, or I'm just having a bad moment because whatever news I read. It used to be really hard for me to realize about that. You know, during my PhD, I would blame my PhD because I was stressed, and I would use that as an excuse for being unpolite or rude, or, you know, not with intention of being polite and rude, but I was angry and stressed, and that was a reason enough for behaving that way. But now it's not okay because we are all doing the same. I can put a name to whatever is happening, so I understand it, and I'm growing from it. Whereas before I would hide it and blame other things,
Mm-hmm.
but not trying to find what was the real problem behind it.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah.
And I'm going to call out two things I'm hearing in that. One is like this expanded experience of compassion towards self and other that this experience is bringing out. And the second is that ability to, take that perspective on yourself, maybe hold something as object that you previously have been subject to really have more space to choose your response. I'm thinking of the quote from Viktor Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning. He has that quote about between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is the power to choose your response. And yeah, there's something about that growth of capacity to be able to take perspective, to take that step back, as you said, and look at ourselves and see, how am I a part of this situation? What's going on for me? And what's the choice I want to make about how I proceed here, as opposed to just being caught up in it and just reacting. So
yeah, it's kind of getting over your ego a little bit and trying to take more perspective in. And there is something that kind of touches me a lot, and it's people who are in their houses and their homes acknowledging how health workers and our essential workers are working so hard for keeping this situation, but how the essential workers are working harder and people are acknowledging that they are working. It's not what we are used to. We are used to expect people to do their job and do the best of their job because they have to. But now it's an exceptional situation, and we are all trying to see farther and trying to see how everybody's trying to make a difference and help each other out, because it's difficult. It's a difficult situation. We are not getting in each other, backs or attacking each other, or you can see the expand kindness. How many people have gone to the balconies to kind of applaud the action of essential workers, or how many people have taken more hours and are working 13 hours per day in order to keep a police station clean as it should. I think it's important that we realize that our life is not just us.
Yeah.
We are part of a community, and how we look after that community, it's going to reflect on us. Therefore, it's our responsibility to look after each other. I am not alone in the world,
Yes.
and I am not against the world. I am part of it. So are my flatmates. So is my family. So is the person who lives, 2 blocks away. Yeah. And if we all try, and we are trying to make a difference for each other, things are working better.
So I'm going to use that to transition into, let's give people some tips for supporting their own development. So it's going to resonate with some of the stuff you just said. One of my first things that I wanted to say was around this recognizing and respecting the diversity of perspectives, the diversity of experiences, right? Not thinking about things in terms of right and wrong, because all perspectives are true and partial. And remembering that and practicing holding those perspectives without judging, that's a developmental practice. So if that's something that you notice yourself doing, that you're, whether you're reading the news or you see somebody doing something that looks like they shouldn't be doing in their bubble, or social distancing protocols, noticing for yourself when that comes up, and see if you can't reduce some of that judgment and see where that person might be coming from. So that's a developmental move that people can practice during this time. Another tip in terms of developmental moves for folks as we move into chapter 4 and wrap up our conversation, there's something about being able to shift from this either or to both and thinking, this considering the full polarity rather than just privileging kind of one side of the system. So I have so much to say about this point, because I feel like the pandemic has just provided this opportunity for us to this container to shift from black and white thinking to embracing a broader spectrum of gray. So I'm thinking about, you know, whether you were really focused on the individual or on the collective. Let's say if we take that as a polarity. Well, now, if you're too focused on yourself, or if you focus on yourself, then maybe you're washing your hands, you know, and practicing social distancing as a means to protect yourself. But at the same time, you're actually also serving the collective, because you're doing things that will keep us from spreading the virus. And I just find it's such an interesting kind of situation. I don't know that I can think of another scenario where, no matter where you are in the polarity, you're kind of taking care of both. So
Yeah.
that's something that struck me with this situation. But if we look at another one that I think is really important for people in terms of balancing the polarity, it's the self-care and other care. So not if we focus too much on self-care, like you were mentioning earlier, we might feel lonely. We're not connecting with others, right? Like we need it sometimes. The upsides of doing that are definitely that we can nourish ourselves, cut ourselves off from the news, or, you know, too much negativity at when we need to. But to create that sustainable system, we also need to bring in that care for others, that component that allows for us to connect, to make a difference with others, you know, the upsides of the other side of the polarity. And if we notice ourselves getting burnt out, feeling like we're giving too much of ourselves, right? Recognizing those warning signals, so that we bring in the self side of the polarity again and try to balance it out. So those, I think polarities are a great tool for supporting people and growing through this, right? Recognize when we overprivilege one side, and move into learning to flow between the two. I think there's another one that's really struck me, and that's the power and vulnerability kind of polarity. Lest you thought that you are completely in control of everything, and if you put it in your schedule, it's going to happen. And, you know, if you are operating from this kind of command and control perspective, then the universe just threw a big spanner in the works, right? And just let you know, you know, there are other forces way outside your control, right? So that's a big wake-up call there. But at the same time, lest you were thinking that, well, little old me, what can I possibly do? You know, what power do I have? Well, heck, now washing your hands, practicing social distancing, you know, you adhering to your bubble protocols like this makes a world of difference, right? This is affecting the whole system in massive ways, you know, reducing the spread of the virus. So that recognition that at the same time, yes, we can be susceptible and vulnerable and, you know, receptive to outside forces, and we have power and agency and the ability to influence at the same time. At the same time, they're both present, right? So recognizing the full polarity, that's, I think, really a great opportunity, a growth move for people, is, you know, not getting stuck in either one point of view, but embracing that spectrum of gray, seeing more possibilities.
Yeah, I really like how you put how you difference and conceptualize power and control, because I don't know, the majority of the people feel more comfortable when they have the situation under control, but does that exist? And then a lot of times you feel powerless, like no matter what you do, you are just, you know, a pawn. And actually, with all that is going on, we kind of have realized that, as you mentioned, our actions have consequences and we have power. And I think people should realize how important they are, how important our actions are, and how important our voice is. We all have a voice, and it matters.
Yes.
And we cannot control all the situations. Life is going to change. When are we going to embrace that change? We cannot schedule a year. Things happen, and we need to be flexible, and we need to embrace that we are not safe forever. We need to interact with our environment. We need to learn, we need to adapt, and we need to do it together, because we have the power to change the wrong that it's been done.
Yeah.
And whether we like it or not, the world has changed right now. Our perspective is more wide, is wider than it used to.
Mm-hmm.
And this process has a lot of, despite the bad consequences, it has a lot of lessons that we have to take into account. And now we have the responsibility to actually perform.
Yeah. There's, I feel like that is one of the key messages I would love to leave the folks listening with, is this recognition of this is not just happening to us. We're also making this happen. And like, if we think about the trajectory of our curve, the spread of the virus here in New Zealand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it look that way? It's because of what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Each of us individually, like the actions we take affect that. Sometimes it can feel like it's out there, it's bigger than me, it's not something I could possibly ever affect, but we are nudging the system all the time with the way that we are. We create ripple effects. And even if it's just in our corner of the world, right? And so just recognizing that there's power in that. And yes, we're also influenceable.
I would actually add on that note one last thing.
Mm.
The situation that New Zealand has, definitely we have made a huge effort, and things are paying off. But we were kind of, we could advance our situation, our steps, because of what was going on in the rest of the world. So in part, it's not just us, it's all the suffering and the mistakes and the good choices that all around the world have been made. It's the reason why we got to react faster. We learn from their consequences and we move forward. And our situation, we are now like going to level 3 next week. And if we can keep it down, like we could actually stop infection here. We are not going to stop the virus. It's not going to happen. But at least we could stop, we could go back to have a normal life, and it's thanks to the experience of others. It's not just our actions. That's what we were talking just before,
Yes.
how powerful we all are and how much other people acts influence our situation, our current situation.
Absolutely.
So we owe this to, our leaders, the rest of the New Zealanders and people living in New Zealand, and also the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. This experience, I think, has definitely woken us up to the fact that we are a global family, that the virus doesn't care about borders.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, we are all in this together. And I think that's been a really interesting wake-up call for us. If I could just share one thing for us as we come to a close, one of the things that I've been hearing that I'd like to offer a different perspective on to support people with growth is the phrase that I'm just waiting for things to go back to normal, or I wonder when things are going to be back to the way that they were, right? And I'd like to encourage people to think about actually your role in this and what do you want to create going forward, rather than waiting for something simply to happen to you, waiting to see how things unfold. Consider also, what is your role in this? What is it that you want the new normal to look like? And I'm thinking from conversations I've had, I'll just offer a few sparks of ideas for folks. What can we do to make sure that what comes next is even better than any past normal we've had? What would a more resilient economy look like? What would a better, more inclusive, more sustainable, more equitable way of living look like? What would it be like if we wore comfy slippers every day, right? Instead of our uncomfortable shoes, right? What if you didn't have to commute 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours a day? What if you didn't have to have a tiring separation between maintaining your work persona and your personal persona? What if you could hop on a video call instead of a plane for your next meeting?
Yeah.
What if children weren't viewed as a disruption? What if you enjoyed the comforts of your yard and home instead of spending a small fortune to travel abroad on your next holiday? What if you were to make more of an effort to connect with people, making eye contact, having conversations with the people you pass on a regular basis, calling your parents more regularly? What if instead of rushing off and staying busy, we were to engage in constructive conflict discussions with our loved ones? I offer those as food for thought as we consider how we might be a part of authoring what comes next, rather than simply waiting to see what happens. So our intention here with this recording was to support others in their own processing of this absolutely unprecedented experience, to hopefully help you find ways to grow through it, to use it to support your development so that we can create something even better moving into the future. If you'd like to stay in touch with us, we're planning on producing more of this, sharing more of our thoughts and resources to support you in your growth. So please do find us on LinkedIn. Please do subscribe and follow us here. Thank you all very much, and take care.
Bye.